Hey guys, to help run the forums, host the website, and travel, we've introduced a universal service fee for in-depth coverage, including this video. My goal is to be unbiased and transparent. It's a privilege to serve you. This is not an endorsement. Let's get into it. Hey guys, we're in New Westminster, British Columbia, Fraser River out there. It's a nice day. It's actually really good for filming, a little bit overcast. They said it might snow today, and I was thinking we'd get to put these fenders to use if some of that melted, but it hasn't, and I'm actually kind of thankful for that. This is the VoltBike Urban. It's a folding electric bike, and I have reviewed it before a couple of years ago. They've made some big improvements, and one of them is that this rear light is now wired in. So it runs off that primary battery pack. You don't have to have independent cells and worry about pressing a button back here. It's all operated off of the LCD display panel. And that's really nice. You know, this bike, it's a pretty good value, $11.99 USD or $13.49 Canadian. This company is actually based near Vancouver, just over that way. So I've gotten to go to their headquarters and walk around a little bit. I'm gonna splice in some footage, but before I do that, I just wanna give you an idea of what the specs are here on this bike. So I like the fact that the battery is integrated into the frame. It's kind of hidden. And then this planetary geared hub motor, same thing. It hides behind that 160 millimeter mechanical disc brake on the left side and this 14 to 28 tooth cassette on the right. This is a 6-speed drivetrain, pretty basic. They're using Shimano Tourney TZ. That's the entry-level component group from Shimano. But the fact that you've got 6 speeds to choose from on a little folding bike, something that you might just be cruising around your neighborhood with, that's great. You know, I've seen a couple of folding electric bikes with a single speed and the chain doesn't fall off quite as easily. If you have just one speed, you don't have to worry about tuning up a derailleur, but VoltBike has done a great job of keeping this thing reliable by including a plastic chain guide, so that's going to keep it on track, a rust-resistant chain, and a derailleur guard in the rear. So this steel guard, it's just going to keep it in good shape. Maybe it's folded like that, or when they ship it to you, because they do sell predominantly online, though you can pick it up in person, save 50 bucks on shipping. I really like that. Another area that they've improved this bike is with alloy fenders. So they're not plastic anymore. An aluminum alloy, it's a little bit sturdier, a little bit quieter, and it's not gonna rust if it gets scratched the way that steel might. So I really appreciate that. They've got the rubber mud flaps back here, so if you're folding it and it gets pushed up against something, it's not gonna bend the fender quite as easily. Same thing up here. If you're pedaling and turning and you have like a toe strike on that, it's not gonna get bent out of shape. Absolutely love the pedals they've chosen. These are the Wellgo aluminum alloy platform pedals that are fairly large with those fixed pins. Compared to a lot of other folding pedals that are plastic, those ones are going to give you better traction. And again, if it were snowing or maybe you're wearing big shoes like I am, this bike, even though it only comes in one size, comes in 2 frame colors, and it's fairly adjustable. So there's a telescoping stem. It can rise up a little bit. Be careful not to rise too far, or these wires and stuff can kind of get pulled, and if you do a really hard turn, some of those connectors could come undone. This is a problem or a challenge that I've seen with many folding electric bikes. So it's not just VoltBike, and it's sort of a trade-off. You get the benefit of potentially a taller stem. You just have to keep that in mind. So I'm trying to give you guys some tips. Really long, extra long seat post and extra thick. So they went with a thicker tube, and that's so it can support a little bit more weight. And maybe you're on a bumpy dock kind of a situation like we are here, a board rock, and you're weighing a little bit more. You know, that can, over time, you just want to have a bike that can support you. So I feel like this is an upgrade that they were pointing out, like, yeah, we've really reinforced the frame. It does weigh a little bit more. The bike weights come up a little bit, but you know, part of that's because of the higher capacity battery and then these tires. So I was talking about going over rough terrain potentially and wanting a thicker seat post. The tires are going to give you a little bit of added comfort. So these are 20 by 2.125. I think in the past they were like 1.75 and then maybe 1.95. So they're getting bigger and bigger. That gives you some stability and comfort depending on the PSI, the pressure settings. And I think it's like 50 to 85 PSI. So there's quite a range to choose from. Fairly thick spokes. Up here we just have 14 standard gauge, and in the rear we have 12. So extra thick where the motor is and where you might have gear. The bike comes with this aluminum alloy bolt-on rack. It's got the light built in and everything, and it's standard gauge tubing. It's got this little spring latch, but VoltBike does sell these waterproof pannier bags, and I love that they've got some reflective kind of a writing or logos on the side. It's not reflective on the back. That's an area where they could improve over time, but it is a little bit of a highlight with the white, and I'm focusing on the white frame here because it's a little bit more visible. And with a folding bike, a lot of times you're lower to the ground, you know, the wheel diameter is smaller, so the whole thing is lower. It makes it very approachable. I would call this a mid-step frame, easier to get your foot over, but less easy to see. And I'm wearing some darker clothing right now too, and a darker helmet, so it might be a good idea to put a little light or something, maybe on your backpack or on your helmet. It's nice that this has lights, but that's a single LED back here, okay? It's not like the world's brightest light. The headlight's pretty nice, a little bit larger. This is a Trendo by Spaninga. And then of course they do have a black frame as well. Not gonna stand out quite as much. And the tires they've chosen, they're Kenda. They're decent, and a fairly thick tread pattern here, somewhat efficient. It's not knobby, but it didn't have like some extra puncture protection like layer that I saw. It also doesn't have reflective sidewall stripes. So those are areas where, you know, kind of leans me back towards having a white frame, a little bit more visible. And then the final comfort pieces that I really liked is that they upgraded to these Velo ergonomic rubber grips. They're not locking, so again, it's kind of a value choice, but a little bit more comfort there. Rubberized edge on these brake levers, really like that. These are mechanical, so mechanical with 160 millimeter rotors, that's fine. It's a smaller rotor size, but when you have smaller wheels, you get a decent mechanical advantage. And finally, the Zoom suspension fork. This is very basic, 25 millimeter stanchion, so kind of narrow. No adjustability here on compression or preload or anything. It's just a basic spring suspension, but it's definitely worth having because when you have a smaller wheel like this, the attack angle gets higher. So you can kind of just feel the bumps a little bit more. You don't span them as you would with a larger wheel. Now, VoltBike does have a model called the Mariner, and it's a folding fat bike. And so that one, if you really want the comfort and maybe a little bit more power from a motor, I think that one's like a 500 watt motor, that could be a good option, but it is gonna weigh even more. Whereas this one's about like 52 pounds. I think that one's 60 plus pounds, okay? So you're definitely weighing more, you're taking up more space. I have measured all the specs on this, the length, the width, the height, and then that telescoping portion there, and I've also measured the folding dimensions. VoltBike has a great website, including an updated manual, so you can see some of the really detailed feedback on this display panel. But I'm gonna go through that in just a minute. I wanna point out, and I haven't called it out yet, they've got that integrated bell over here. Both of the brake levers do have motor inhibitors, so you get a good amount of safety here, and they're using a 12 magnet cadence sensor. So that's kind of the highest resolution I've seen for a cadence sensing design versus something like really fancy like a torque sensor or multi-sensor. So I would say they're using a lot of really proven technology. They're giving you a good setup for commuting, you know, regardless of weather. You got the safety elements and stuff, you've got some good comfort, and then a lot of those extra sturdy points that we were talking about before. I feel like that's a really good overview. George, would you help me like unfold this one real quick?
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Yeah, so,
Okay,
oh, and while he's doing that, I should say, there's the end of the battery pack, and so it fits into those pins. And then I think to get it out, you have to unlock the bottom, right?
Yeah, that's correct. So basically, you have to unlock the key lock on the bottom. Okay, so you just grab it over here. You then walk the foldables.
Very nice.
Also this piece over here.
Beautiful. And then I think we were talking about how, maybe it was the other one, you had like the integrated wires on the Mariner. This one, the wires are a bit more external, but in some ways, they're a little less likely to get pinched because of that. You know, and they're taking up that entire bay for the battery pack, which is a 36 volt, 13 amp hour. Again, it used to be, I think, like 10 amp hours. And then the motor, this is a Bafang 350 watt planetary geared motor. So we're looking at a fairly efficient system, but with, you know, a nearly 500 watt hours of capacity and a good mechanical advantage on the smaller wheel size for a hub motor, it should get you decent range. I definitely appreciate that. And then being able to override with the trigger throttle, like, it gives you all the freedom that you want in terms of like a ride. Very efficient and low level assist, and then you come up to a hill and you can boost it a little bit with that trigger throttle. I appreciate that. I actually want to show you guys the headquarters real quick, so I think I'm going to cut to that. I was able to go inside and meet these guys. Let's do that.
I do remember last time you came like 2 years ago, right? It has been so much time since then. We purchased that like a brand new warehouse over here.
You purchased this, so this is like your own warehouse.
Yeah, that's our own warehouse. Let's go inside. Yeah,
let's check this thing out. So I've already actually been in here looking around a little bit, and I met Bianca earlier, and I think you're one of the people would talk to if they called in and had questions or whatever. That's right. I'm putting a face with a voice here. I really appreciate it. And George was telling me that you actually bought one of the bikes before you worked here.
Yes, I'm on my third VoltBike now. I'm getting the Bravo. So
Getting a Bravo. Okay, sweet. Well, so that's one of the ones we're going to cover during this trip. So.
I think she's one of our, I think, very first customer. You know, she bought like a VoltBike Metro electrical scooter like 3 years ago. Then she upgraded to VoltBike Elegant and then VoltBike Bravo. You know, finally. So
very cool.
She is basically one of our customers. So she turns out to be our customer service now.
When she keeps coming back, so that's a good sign. And this is Chris, kind of like a product manager, and also you said some support, right?
Correct, yes.
Awesome.
We provide all kinds of support to our customers on the phone, online, or in person. We offer a year warranty on all the mechanical and electrical.
Hey, Bernie. What's going on here?
I'm just truing up the spokes, putting tension on the spokes. We do every single rim that comes on our bicycles. Everyone is trued up and everyone is tensioned.
This is looking good, and I think that's a real differentiator. George, I don't know if you did this before, because a lot of companies, especially with some of the more affordable bikes, they'll be like made somewhere else and shipped in a box. You unbox them, you true the wheels, you get the cable set up, and then you repackage it so that it's like really fine-tuned.
Exactly. Right? So that's what we do. So basically, the bike basically comes out of the box. We do the spokes, the gears, adjust the brake cables. We make sure that the battery is working. You know.
You actually charge it up and like cycle it?
We charge it up as well. Yeah. We test the motor, and then we pack it back in a box. Extra heavy box, you know, basically one of those boxes. We put like styrofoams inside, like a carton boxes, to make sure it is actually, I mean, basically bulletproof, you know. It
Sweet.
is.
Sweet. Well, that's good, because you might be, I mean, like, look, a lot of people don't have a nice bike stand like this, and you might not have this. This is a spoke wrench right here. You might not have the nice tools or that experience that these guys do. Is this Yavor? Is that right?
Yes.
Rad, dude. I met this guy earlier, and we were chatting a little bit, just like checking out some of the different models, and I think this is the Bravo. This is the one that Bianco is going to get, maybe, right?
Absolutely.
Is this a popular one?
It is. It is.
I'm going to hop back out to the review. Just kind of fun to show behind the scenes. I get the privilege of riding these bikes when they're built and they're all set up kind of professionally by the team. But it sounds like more than a lot of the other online direct companies, you're kind of going to get that experience too. Apparently, all you have to do is kind of twist the handlebar, install the pedals, and the pedals do have like a left and a right sticker on them or whatever, so it should be pretty clear. There's instructions in the back. Am I getting this right, Bernie?
You are, yes.
Okay, I think that's about it, you guys. I'll see you back out there. Okay, guys, welcome back. I do want to call out that when you get the box, you're going to have this nice little tool set, but you might not need to use it because they do open them and assemble them and get everything set up before they ship it out. Here's the charger for this one. Standard 2-amp charger, fairly lightweight, 1.3 pounds, and packable, so if you got that bag or maybe a little backpack, you'd be just fine. And then here is the display panel. That's the next step. I'm gonna turn this thing off by holding the C button off, and we'll turn it back on doing the same thing. Okay, V2, it was telling us like the software revision. And then I want to come down here and show you that there's the keyhole right there for getting the battery out. Here's the charging port, and it's somewhat clear of the crank arm. I like that they've actually got a tool-free adjustable length kickstand, but it is center mount, so you get that like pedal lock thing. You can't back the bike out without the crank arm colliding. That's my one sort of like, meh, it'd be nice if that was a little bit different, but there, you know, it's kind of a cost savings approach. And I was talking to George about that, and he's like, well, we didn't really have a place to mount the kickstand further back. You know, on this side with that single main tube design, the chain is below, so you don't have to have a slap guard or anything because it doesn't have a traditional chainstay. So anyway, coming back up to the display panel, I love it's got a battery percentage as well as 6 dots on that little infographic. And then we've got current speed right there. It's in kilometers per hour right now. We are in Canada. Pedal assist, it defaults to level 1, and the throttle is hot at all times. So even if I take it down to 0, okay, so even though we're in assist level 0 right now, throttle still works. It gives you full power. Okay, and then coming back to the different levels of assist, there are 5 of them. Clicking the S plus or S minus to navigate those, and then an odometer. And if we press the C button, we're going to cycle through some of these other readouts. So we press it and it goes to trip meter, voltage, current, RM, that's like remaining mileage. So some sort of a estimator of range. I haven't really seen it work. It kind of shows 0, so that might be something to tinker with. And then trip 1, and then watts, so you can actually see how many watts are being used. It's a pretty cool display. We have to hold the S+ button for a second to activate the lights. You can see that little infographic come up there, and then the headlights are working and everything. Definitely appreciate that. I didn't find walk mode. I was trying to hold S- and it never really did anything, but I did find that if you hold the plus and the minus simultaneously, we get into a menu system. And I think if we go to P2, you can actually change to miles if you want from kilometers. So I'm gonna leave it as is, just press the plus and the minus again, and then do a little ride test here with Bianca. How do you feel about that, Bianca?
I'm ready.
You ready to go for it? Okay, sweet. And Bianca does some of the customer support and shipping at VoltBike, so she might be the person you're talking to if you end up calling in, needing a little bit of help. And you've owned a couple of VoltBikes yourself, so
That's right.
sweet.
Yeah.
This is what I've heard is the first time that you're going out on the Urban, right?
Yes, I've never tried the Urban before, so this will be a new one for me.
Well, thank you. Thanks for doing it. Sweet. Getting a little bit of rattling here, like maybe the suspension. So we are on these kind of a wooden dock setup here. Great job. Will you hit the lights, Bianca? There we go. That's what I'm talking about. Definitely. Do you use your lights like daily?
Pardon me?
With your commute, are you using your lights all the time?
Yeah, especially when I go back when it's dark.
Yeah, it's a good call. And we are kind of in the winter months right now, so it's a
Yes,
good
it is
safety
cold.
feature. Well, and speaking of safety, that we both got on the helmets that you guys ship with the bikes. Do you ever use these yourself, or did you get another helmet?
I actually wear a full-face helmet.
Whoa. Nice, extra safe.
Yeah, I like it.
It's good stuff. Okay, so I'm gonna do a little bit more riding here. You might hear the keys jingling just a bit, but otherwise, you know, the fenders are doing pretty well. The suspension, it's feeling so, you know, fairly comfortable. Nice to get a rough patch here to test this out. The 350 watt motor is definitely more of a power sipper than like the 500 or 750 watt motors that they've got on some of their other models. So for me, this is kind of a economical, a little bit light, it's fairly nimble. Still 52 pounds to lift it up is kind of a lot, but you can take that battery pack out and save, you know, 6.5 pounds right there. So here we go, pedal assist. A little bit of a delay when I stopped pedaling, and that's been my experience with all the Volt bikes. You know, there's just a little bit of delay with that 12 magnet cadence sensor, so keep in mind you can pull those brake levers at any time to cut power. And also, if you get the pannier, you'll notice that it's mounted right now in a pretty good spot, but my heel gets kind of close. So, you know, if your heel's hanging off the back of that pedal, you could get a little bit of contact. And then we don't have it in right now, but they have little inserts that help it to fit onto the narrower tube a little bit better. We were using this same bag for some of the bigger bikes the other day that have like a little bit thicker racks. This rack's more standard, and I like that they've got a little V right there, so you could use bungee cords if you wanted to do that. So this time I'm gonna do throttle on demand, and you can see where the trigger throttle, a lot of their other ones have twist throttles. Trigger throttle's kind of nice. I think there's even like a cruise control setting in here, and they have a great manual back at the website, so you can get even more deep on this, and holding the S plus, S minus will get you some of those different settings, but knowing exactly what they mean, that's where the manual comes in handy. We've got that big SIS index thumb shifter, which works great if you have gloves because the buttons are very like separate and large versus little trigger shifters, and triggers just won't fit a lot of times on throttle bikes like this because the housing just blocks that space. So here we go, I'm gonna do a little smooth throttle action here. And then we got the, whoa boy, a little bit of hands-free riding here, just checking out the stability of the bike. The larger tires definitely help, the 2.125 inch like width. But sometimes these bikes can feel a little twitchy, you know, with the smaller wheel, and I already talked about the higher attack angle. This bike's feeling pretty stable though. You know, it's doing a pretty good job, even on this semi-bumpy stretch of road. And that's something I appreciate, you know, when you're when you're out riding. There's enough things to think about. It's good to have a bike that feels fairly solid, and they do have that extra secure like folding button point right down here, and that telescoping point. Make sure that's tight and everything, but keep an eye on those wires like we were talking about before. Okay guys, from here you can see that 350 watt planetary geared Bafang hub motor. I believe it puts out about 45 newton meters of torque, and then 468 watt hours on the 36 volt battery pack, 52 tooth chainring with the plastic guide. Gonna keep that chain on track. I'm gonna zip around with this thing and just give you a nice view of the drivetrain. But I do want to call out, as far as these latches and everything, I was talking to George, and you can tighten them over time. Sometimes over time, if you're folding and unfolding the bike a whole lot, some of the latches can get a little loose, but these ones are designed to let you tighten them, keep everything sort of rattle free and just feeling very sturdy and stable. And that's it's kind of unique. I definitely appreciate those little extra features, and they've come in over the course of the years of refining the models. So let's see. I'm going to take it all the way up to the highest level of assist, which on this bike is 5. A lot of their other bikes have 9 levels of assist, but for me 5 is fine. It's just a little bit quicker to press those buttons, and it is a different display. A lot of the other ones have like a display right in the middle with an external button pad. This one's all combined, which is sort of nice when you think about folding the bike and just protecting that display, and also having things bang around. I often carry an extra towel, and I got like a plastic ended bungee cord to keep folding bikes from coming unfolded. This one does not have a magnet or a strap or anything, and the fenders can occasionally get bumped out of position. You just kind of push them back into place. That's sort of how it works with folding bikes. Maybe everything except for like the Go cycles, the really, really fancy, expensive ones. This is pretty standard, but I like what they've done. They've made a lot of good choices here, balancing value with quality and reliability. So I'm in the highest level of assist. Here we go. So you could probably tell from the time I stopped pedaling to the time the motor quit, there was definitely a delay, and that's where it's good to have those brake levers with motor inhibitors built in, just so you can override and stop this thing a little bit quicker, feel a little bit more stable. The motor itself is fairly quiet, feels smooth. This time I'm going to use the trigger throttle. The brakes are working really well. These are Tektro Novella mechanical disc brakes. You know, it's a good compromise, again, on value. Over time, the cables can stretch a little bit, but they can be tuned up yourself just by using the little toolkit that comes with the bike. So I appreciate that. I was able to get up to about 32 kilometers per hour. That's the 20 mile per hour top speed that is supported here. Now I'm going to aim you towards the suspension fork here, which again is fairly basic, kind of a, you know, there's not really a lot of adjustability, and if you weigh a lot, you could get a little bit of bob happening, like as you pedal, the bike might go up and down a little bit, but I personally like having a suspension fork, and this one being a little bit lighter weight keeps that bike in the under 52 pounds. Yeah, I don't know, it's neat that it's color matched and everything too, so it's a good looking bike, but there is going to be just a little bit more bob happening, so let's do it. You might have been able to see a little bit of dive when I was stopping there. Hopefully you got a good view. I think that's about it, you guys. That's the VoltBike Urban. For the full written review, I'll see you back at ElectricBikeReview.com. Please chime in if you feel like I missed something, or maybe you own a Volt bike and you have just something to share. to me, it's pretty special that these guys started in Canada, that they've been around for like 5 years or something, maybe even a little bit longer. George has been doing a good job there in that new facility. So it's cool. I've spent a lot of time covering these bikes recently because I think they're one of the more popular sellers, especially in Canada, but also in the States. Have fun out there, ride safe. We'll see you next time.